Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. What a move it's been over the last couple of days. We've seen green across the board. Very nice to see the bulls stepping in finally after a long flat week that we saw in Bitcoin last week. The wait was worth it after a very almost wicky, very volatile on a smaller time frame weekend as Bitcoin tried to push up a few times, kept getting rejected. Finally, the buyers came in. So we'll definitely look at the charts. I am going to be a little cautious here as we are now approaching a key resistance level. So I'm going to go over that here. But before we do, we'll take a quick look at the coin market cap here for the week. You can see over the last 7 days, looking at the $1 billion plus club, some very nice moves over the last few days. EOS up 25%, ETH 21%, Bitcoin Cash up 20%. And there's been some nice double-digit gains for the week. Bitcoin is up 10%, most of that coming here in the last couple of days. And in small and mid cap range, we're starting to see those guys move as well. But I always like to see the majors moving along with Bitcoin and of course outperforming. And so there has certainly been plenty of trades to be had here over the last few days. And we're approaching a little bit of a cautionary point. So in my opinion, this is probably not the time to start FOMOing, chasing those long green candles. I think we're due for a little bit of breather, a little consolidation, and so we'll look at a few key levels. But looking at the overall crypto market cap, it's looking good. $134 billion market cap coming off the lows there. Bitcoin dominance dropping a little bit down to 51.8% as some of these big cap names are outperforming here in the near term. Before I forget, remember that there is a sale going on through the end of February. So few days left here, about 10 days left. 30% off the new cryptocurrency trading course, the 4-step course. You can certainly buy each of the sections of the course separately, but if you get the bundle, you get a better deal there, and you still can get applied the 30% discount to that. So check that out, nodeinvestor.com/training. So let's get to the charts here. Looking at Bitcoin now, there's a couple of things I want to point out. Let's zoom out here, go to the daily chart first. Of course, we've been talking about that 3,700 level. That was the key resistance level that needed to be cleared. We blasted right through that yesterday. Very nice to see that. And we've run straight to the next resistance level. In early January, we were trying to break out above that 4,000 level. 4,100 just kept getting rejected. And that was the window of resistance that I was looking at here yesterday as we were approaching. If I zoom in here a little bit, let me scroll this out. You can see that little consolidation there. Prices were going flat. We had that failed breakout attempt and then pulled right back in before prices dropped down back into that mid 3K range. And we can see that that's exactly where prices have paused right now. I'm also seeing prices feeling a little extended. Look at the RSI on the 4-hour chart, was pushing 90 for a minute there. I mean, just getting up there. The MACD histogram is starting to roll over a little bit. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean we just come crashing down, but best case scenario, the bulls want to see some consolidation up in this range here, digest some of this move, establish a new floor, a new base of support, and then that will give the market some legs and some momentum room to push through that 4,100 level up to the next resistance level. So ideally, that's what we want to see. We want to see these short-term moving averages catch up and begin to also form some support there. You can see the 10 EMA here is now right around that 3850 level. The 22 EMA, which I also track, is around 3750, and so that one still has some room to go there on the upside. If we zoom in just a little bit more, looking at that 1-hour chart here, there is a slight bearish divergence starting to form here. And so over the last couple of days, we've made a series of higher highs, with this most recent peak here today just shy of 4K. It was 39.71 here on the Coinbase exchange. And look at the RSI as this has materialized over the last couple of days. RSI is starting to drift lower. Every peak on the upside has been met with a lower peak on the RSI. The MACD histogram barely ticked into the green. Looks like it wants to roll back over into the red. And so this is leading me to believe that a little bit of momentum is being lost on this move, and I think we're due for a little bit of a breather. Like as I said, I don't want to necessarily say this is going to come crashing all the way down. That's certainly not the case, and best case scenario in my opinion would be that Bitcoin just kind of sits tight here for a couple of days, because I believe in that scenario we'll see some pretty decent moves in some of those alts that haven't had quite those breakout moves yet. And we'll take a look at a few of those names right now. So that'd be what I want to see here. It's just a little bit of pause, maybe some choppy action in Bitcoin. I think as long as this level of support holds, we'll see some pretty decent moves in some of those other alts. Looking at the Fibonacci retracement levels, a few areas to keep an eye on here if this continues to pull back. That first level, that 382 level, is just above 3,800. And on that 4-hour chart, that would line up pretty good with these moving average pairs. That'd be right in the middle of that zone. And if it continued further, the most I would want to see it personally is that 3760, 3770 level. Ideally, that'd be where we want to see that hold. That's about the 50% retracement level. Pulling all the way back down to the 618 would get it just above the breakout point, but that'd be a pretty deep retracement in my opinion. And so we don't want to necessarily see 3,700 tested again. Now, it would still be bullish while it maintains above that level, of course, especially on the daily chart. But just because of the strong move that we've seen here today with the very good volume, ideally, the bulls want to see a consolidation happen above that mid 3,700 level. Around 3,800 would be best case scenario, in my opinion, for a little bit of a consolidation move. So that's what I'm going to be looking for here over the next few days. It is extended. Again, I'm cautious here. I've been starting to scale out a little bit, raise some cash as we are here near these highs. And I'm prepared to jump back in if we see a little bit of consolidation here and it looks like it wants to push higher. But at this point, the risk is higher for more downside. And so it's a favorable risk return position for me to raise a little bit of cash here. Now, I'm not going net short at this point because this market is just so strong. Ideally, I'd just be looking for some long exposure trades. So keep that in mind. Selling, taking profits does not necessarily translate into this is a good place to go short, because you may not get that momentum to the downside. It could just be choppy and sideways here for a few days, and that's ideally what we want to see here. So that's the level I'm watching here on Bitcoin. If we go back to the daily chart, another thing I want to point out here, above this level, of course, this 4,100 level, there's going to still be a series of resistance levels to be marching up along the way. 4,400 is the next level I'm watching. And then there's this gap here. So we've got quite a bit of room. Psychological 5K is right in the middle there. And then, of course, this big consolidation here that we had on that first day of the break around 5,500. But that's a long ways up. I think looking at those levels at this point is getting a bit ahead of ourselves. More than likely, if it pushes above that 4,200 level, it's going to be a little bit of pause action going into 4,400, and that'd be the next real key level to be keeping an eye on. And if we go to the weekly chart, that's also where the 22 EMA on the weekly is, right around that 4,500 level, 4,400. And so we're still very much in this bear zone, bear pattern. We're seeing a nice counter trend rally, trying to break out of this little bear pennant to the upside. But the big picture, keep in mind that this is still coming off of the lows, and we're just kind of testing, bouncing a little bit on the upside, which is good. It's very nice to see that for once here. And another positive thing to note here is on the daily chart, going to the RSI. The RSI is closing above 60. Now, for those of you that have taken the RSI course that I put out, I have bull and bear zones that I watch. They're just windows of ranges here. And when something struggles to clear that 60 level, it's not confirmed in the bull zone yet. And vice versa, when it's living below that 40 level, that's the bear zone for me. And the last time we saw prices getting above 60 here was in September. And so it's nice to see prices starting to get back above that. It's good news for the bulls. It's a win there. And it's been quite some time. We had a small attempt here before the big break lower, but since that entire move, we've not been able to see RSI daily get above 60 up until this week. So first time in a long time we've seen that. As long as prices close above 3,700, this will also turn into a green month, which would be the first time in 6 months that we've seen a green month. And so very positive to see at least a little bit of near-term buying action coming into the market. But I do believe we're due for a little bit of a breather. Let's take a look at some of the other charts here first. So taking a look at these from the Bitcoin pair here, look at ETH. Had topped out here over the weekend, pausing a little bit, and now it looks like it's rolling over. And so versus BTC, the level to be watching here on ETH is that 0.036 level right there. Below that, you could see another quick leg lower. If we do a measured move on this, I'm going to take the conservative route there. But below that, you could see a drop down to around that next breakout point here, which was 0.035. So that's what I'd be watching on the Ethereum side. Had a very nice move out of this wedge here over the weekend. I was lucky enough to catch that breakout. Probably got out a little bit too early. I started to scale out right here, so I missed that last bit of the move, but I did manage to roll that into EOS. And so we'll move over to EOS. And EOS has been a surprisingly strong name here over the last couple of days. A very nice move off the lows here. Had that breakout here over the weekend. This was the consolidation that I was watching. So when I scaled out of the ETH, I rolled it into EOS pre-breakouts with a very tight stop. So it was a good risk-reward entry here at that point. And then I caught most of this move. I did miss this last leg up here yesterday as I was scaling out here into the rally. But I'm not complaining here. It was a very nice take on the upside. Now I'm watching it here to see if it can consolidate a little bit more. Looking at that 4-hour chart again, was extended. RSI was hitting here 87, 88 on the upside. And so this pause is healthy. It's holding up here at this upper end of the range and letting these moving averages catch up. And so it's still very much in play. What I'm watching here is the daily chart is now breaking out in the big picture. Let me zoom out to that daily chart. This was a big resistance level that we finally have closed above here, and so the volume has been very strong, but you're seeing big volume with the wick, so a lot of churning happening here at this resistance level. Not unusual to see that, as a lot of folks are selling into this resistance. But if we can see a consolidation here, if the bulls can continue to hold some support, let the daily chart consolidate a little bit more, another day or two, let these moving averages catch up, then I'm going to be paying attention for a potential run higher above this level. And then the next big resistance level is quite a ways up, so has some room to run here if this daily chart can consolidate. But near term, certainly extended. Even the daily RSI is way up here in the upper 70s, and so I think it just needs some time to digest some of this move. It needs a little bit of a breather. So I've scaled out of that, no longer in that trade, but I am certainly going to keep an eye on this here in the coming days. Now looking at Litecoin, this is the daily chart of Litecoin. Definitely keeping an eye on this one here. It's been consolidating here for the last week and a half or so after that very strong move it had. Litecoin was one of the early movers, one of the quick movers on the way up while most of the market was just kind of sitting tight. And this has now been consolidating here for a little over a week here. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on this one. The moving averages on the daily are finally catching up. It's let that RSI cool off enough. And if Bitcoin can pause here as well, I'm going to see if Litecoin can show another leg higher, follow through. Next big resistance level is around that 0.015. That's going to be the level I'm watching on the LTC side versus Bitcoin. If we look at it on the USD pair, you can see on the USD pair, it's also right at this resistance level. So it makes sense that it's kind of just pausing here, letting this digest that move a little bit. A little bearish divergence here. If you see there's a slight higher high on the price with a lower high on the RSI, same with the MACD histogram. And so ideally, this just needs to sit tight here for a little bit longer. On the 4-hour charts, same thing here. You're seeing this push higher right into that resistance. Hasn't been able to push through just yet, but it's definitely on the radar. It's been one of the stronger names, and very often strength begets strength. You see these names just run, they pause for a little bit, consolidate, and then right when everyone forgets about them, they run again. If we look at Binance Coin, another big push higher, pausing, had about a week and a half of consolidation, pushing right through here, some good volume coming in there. If we look at it from the USD pair, and keep in mind Binance onto the Bitcoin side of things are pushing into new high territory, and so very nice, very good setup on the USD pair. I mean, almost a classic cup and handle type of pattern. You see this consolidation. Look at how tight it got here in the last little bit there before pushing higher. Very tight range. Volume started to decline just a little bit, and then big volume coming in as it pushes through. That's exactly what the bulls want to see on a breakout move. So very good action on Binance Coin. Again, like many names, a little extended here now, so I'm not necessarily would be chasing this coin at that point, but if you cut the breakouts, very good move there on the upside. One name I'm also watching here is Dash. Now Dash was a very strong move a few days back, had that big push up before pausing, very constructive consolidation. Look at this move down here for about 6 days. Volume was drying up on that move lower, hit that moving average, and then began pushing higher yesterday, but has pulled right back in right at that same level. If we zoom into the 4-hour chart, notice where it failed. This was the prior peak from last week and almost exactly, we had a wick show up right there. Now it's still holding up, so I'm keeping an eye on it, being patient with this one. It's still above this little bit of a near-term resistance break that it had yesterday, and so it's one that I'm going to be patient with, but definitely on the radar just because it had that constructive pullback on the daily chart. And so if we begin to see some rotation out of those names that have been strong, and of course if Bitcoin doesn't have a steep drop but instead kind of just has one of those constructive sideways upper range consolidations, then I'm going to be looking for these type of names to begin moving higher, playing a little bit of catch up. And so Dash is on the radar for that. Another one is Icon, has also been range bound here for the last few days, trading sideways, still on my radar, looking for a potential breakout here. If it can push through out of this range, then the next level I'm looking for is that 730 to 740 range on the BTC pair. And so these are what I mean by some rotation. So if we begin to see names like EOS and ETH and some of these just kind of sit tight here for a few days, then look for some of these other names that have been range bound and sitting tight to begin potentially moving higher. One of those was IOTA as well, and IOTA is starting to edge out here. You can see it's starting to push higher, so not a huge percentage move, but I'm looking for around 8,300 to maybe 8,500 on the way up, as long as it can hold above this support level. Notice it was resistance here, and again resistance here for a little bit, and then finally pushed through and has now been closing above that level, that 7,800 level on the chart versus BTC. And so this one's starting to edge higher. You can see making a series of higher lows over the last few days. And so IOTA is looking pretty good. I'd like to see a little bit more momentum come in here as volume is picking up. Stellar Lumens finally coming off the lows here. It's been testing these lows for a few days here. Looks like it was building some support. I didn't want to chase it. I took a few shots at it, as some of you guys know, here and here. I decided just going to wait for this thing to show some stronger volume, get out of this little range that it's been in, and it's finally doing that. So it's starting to clear some near-term resistance here. Volume is much stronger here on the upside than it has been here in recent past. The buying volume is certainly outperforming the selling volume, and so it looks like it's putting in a pretty good low here. In the big picture, we know Stellar has been very beaten up, down drastically from the recent highs, has had a big fall off here even in the last 2 months, and so it's coming off the lows. So it's not unusual to see these names that are coming off the lows making some big percentage moves just because they've come off quite a bit, and even a partial retracement of some of that move translates into a pretty decent upside from here. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one. If it can consolidate, provide a better risk reward entry, potentially may take another shot at this guy here. But good to see Stellar coming off the lows here after building a little bit of base of support there. And last but not least, Cardano, one I'm definitely watching here, has had a strong move yesterday. It's been a little choppy here just as it run right into this resistance level above that 1220 level, and just sitting tight, consolidating, letting these moving averages catch up. But if we zoom out, look at the big picture, there's a big inverse head and shoulder forming here. This blue line here would represent the neckline, slight drift to the downside. And so this is the right shoulder that is forming right now. If it could push above today's resistance, then I'd be looking for another test of that neckline, and that'd be a good place to either scale out of that trade for me or potentially just trail the stop up higher. And then of course a second trade would be if it breaks out above this neckline, I'd be looking for a potential throwback into that and then a push up. So a couple of good trades to potentially be had here on Cardano over the coming weeks. Definitely one I'm watching here, but near term, zooming into that 4-hour chart, has been strong here over the last couple days, looking good versus BTC, outperforming. So one I'm going to keep an eye on here in the near term. So all in all, good market all around. We're starting to see some of the smaller mid-cap names get some rotation, and we're seeing some of those names push higher here today. But I just want to caution, we've had a couple of strong days. Everyone's getting very excited. I'm reading it on Twitter and some of the comments, and it's good because we're finally seeing some positive action. But when everyone starts getting excited, when shorts are approaching those lows and the longs are approaching the highs, I begin to get a little cautious, and not necessarily short, but I begin to book some of those gains and be a little more patient here at this point, just because we are due for a little bit of consolidation. But like I said, I'm watching a few of those names that have just sat tight and potentially looking for some movement in those, but I will certainly be playing it a little bit more conservative than I have over the last 2 days, just because we've already seen that big move, and you don't necessarily want to give back a large portion of those gains if the market begins to roll over from here. So what I'm going to be watching for here in the next couple days is that 3,800 level to hold, and then of course pushing through that 4K level and into 4,100. Above that, between 4,200 and 44 is the next level that I'm going to be looking for here. So good luck to you guys. Appreciate you watching as always, and we'll look for a live stream here later this week. Until next time, take care everyone.